As people are still coming in, I'm just going to start with some announcements. We are recording this, so for our Wildcat friends who aren't able to join us right now, they will be able to see it later on demand. But we appreciate everyone being here today. And as we get started, my name is Lacey Niemeyer-John, and I am the Director of Alumni Career and Professional Development. And thanks to all the alumni, students, friends who are joining us for our Cats in the Corner office conversation with alumna Shelly Lowe. So we're really excited to have her. Hello, Shelly. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Cats in the Corner Office is our online speaker series featuring highly accomplished University of Arizona alumni and distinguished faculty and staff members. So this event is presented with our partner, the Arizona Bookstores and the Arizona Alumni Association's Career Lab. And the Career Lab is here to help our alumni navigate and manage their careers, to build their professional networks. And you can find more information about our events and some of the resources that we offer at arizonaalumni.com/career lab. You can also follow us on Twitter at Alumni Career Lab. And it's always a good time to show your Wildcat pride. So don't forget to purchase your favorite Wildcat gear by checking out Arizona Bookstores at shop.arizona.edu. And you can also follow them on Twitter at UA Bookstores. Shelly is wearing some wonderful gear from the bookstore. Yes, she's modeling that today. It looks wonderful. And again, we're going to record this conversation for all of our friends and Wildcat fans out there who aren't able to join us right now. And we'll be able to find the recording on our website, and you can view it whenever you need to. So we're going to have a discussion with Shelly and talk about her career, and you are welcome to submit questions. Please utilize the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen, and we'll be sure to get to as many as we can at the end of our discussion today. So before I turn it over to Shelly, I just have to read her long list of accomplishments. And we are really excited to hear more about the process and the steps that she took to achieve these many great things. So Shelly Lowe is an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation. She grew up in Ganado, Arizona on the Navajo Reservation. She is currently the executive director of Harvard University's Native American program. And prior to this role, she held the position of Assistant Dean for Native American Affairs in the Yale College Dean's Office, and she was the director of the Native American Cultural Center at Yale University. In addition, Shelly spent 6 years as the Graduate Education Program Facilitator for the American Indian Studies program at the University of Arizona. And during her time at the University of Arizona, she was actively involved in the Native American Student Affairs Office and the American Indian Alumni Club. Shelly is a proud Wildcat, graduating twice, and soon to be 3 times, with a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology, and again with a Master of Arts degree in American Indian Studies. And she is currently working on her PhD, and we are really excited for her dissertation to come out. So Shelly has served on many boards on the national level, including as an Obama-appointed member of the National Council on the Humanities for National Endowment for the Humanities, and on the MIT Solve Indigenous Fellows Leadership Team. She's also on the board of the National Indian Education Association and as a board of trustee for the National Museum of American Indian. She has presented and published in the field of American Indian higher education, and is currently completing her doctorate in higher education with a focus on American Indian student services and success. So we are so fortunate and really excited to have you today, Shelly, and to share your story. So we really appreciate you making the time.
Thank you, Lacey.
So Shelly, you've done so much in your career to this point. Can you give us a little background on what this journey was like and really what you're doing now in your current role at Harvard.
So currently I am the executive director of the Harvard University Native American program. So I live and work in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is on the traditional homelands of the Massachusetts tribe. And majority of my work is focused on supporting Native students, but also supporting Native American teaching and research across the various schools at Harvard. And I came here after serving in multiple positions, working in kind of Native American affairs at University of Arizona and then at Yale University.
Wonderful. And, I've heard you talk about your story. I've read about your story, and it's just incredible what you've been able to do and the milestones that you have really overcome to get where you are today. So would you mind just telling our viewers a little bit about your journey and maybe some of the key points as you came to your career here and beyond the University of Arizona?
Well, I think as I look back at my career, it actually started with failure, which is really hard to take and to deal with. So I came to the University of Arizona as a Flynn Scholar in 1992. After living and going to school on the Navajo reservation, and I was enrolled in calculus, and I had never taken calculus before. I did not understand anything about calculus, and I failed. And it was so upsetting and shocking, and it just really kind of crushed me in my understanding of my abilities and my kind of trajectory coming into the university, especially as a Flynn Scholar and someone, who was supposed to be one of those top students academically. I just didn't know kind of how to get myself adjusted to the university. I didn't know how to study and, really kind of focus on doing the best that I could to not fail calculus. And I took a long time for me to reflect and say, what's wrong? What happened? I don't understand. How did I get into this situation with all of the abilities that I had and then fail? And that's where my career started. I thought, this is not right, right? Not just so much my ability, I couldn't do it, but something needs to change, because then I started to see this happening with other Native students as they were coming in. And I started to realize that it wasn't just me, that this is actually something that happens to a lot of Native students that come into higher education. And I kind of then made it my goal to ensure that this is not happening, that students can come in, Native students can come in, they can thrive, they can really be successful, and they can graduate with a real sense of accomplishment, but also feeling like they belong, right? That this was a good choice, that this was a good school for me to go to, feeling proud in what they have done, and really being open to supporting and giving back, both to, to their communities, but to the institutions that they went to as well.
Yeah. And when I hear you talk about your story, and as we've read about your story in multiple publications, I'm so impressed with like the grit, that true like bear down spirit that you really embodied, coming from a rough start, whether it's in calculus or even just the adjustment to college life. How has your experience as a Wildcat and going through that kind of tough time, helped you achieve your goals in your career up to this point?
Well, I'm going to be honest, Lacey, when I got to U of A, I did not like it at all. I thought this was an awful place. It's too hot. The people there were so different. They were loud. And, I actually had a lot of, some faculty, fellow other students in my courses who were really judgmental, who kind of said to me, oh, Native students just fail. You're not going to make it. You're not going to succeed here. And, oh, you got in because you're Native American, and so they let you in because of that. Or you got the Flynn Scholarship just because you're Native American, right? There were all these kind of unwelcoming aspects to my arrival at U of A. And not to say that there weren't welcoming aspects. There was a lot. The Honors College in particular was really supportive, really had a strong community. The Flynn Scholars were really great. But there was just this kind of, negative expectation and view of Native students and then of me as a Native American student. And it took me a long time to decide that I liked the institution and that I felt like I, was a part of the institution. And it really, I'm pretty sure it wasn't until, I got involved in Native American programs and clubs, particularly American Indian Alumni Club, that I really felt like, yes, this is my institution. I am a Wildcat. I am part of the Wildcat family. And once I got to that point, right, then I wanted other Native students and other individuals to have that same feeling and to have that same sense of ownership and support for the institution. So I really do think that when I was there as an undergrad and even during my graduate programs, we meaning the university had some of the most amazing Native support programs on campus. The Native American Student Affairs. We at that time had American Indian Graduate Center, which was a little house first south of campus, then just north of campus. The American Indian Studies program, the American Indian Language Development Institute, Indigenous Peoples Law and Policy program. Like there were all these pockets of Native programming and Native experts. I mean, I went to school with tons of Native faculty. I say tons, meaning, more than 2 or 3. And I still meet students today who have never taken a course with a Native American instructor. And it just boggles me that, they're missing out kind of on that kind of expertise and mentorship and people that you can really look up to, as a Native American student and as somebody who's really thinking about what is my future going to be and where am I going to go. And I do think, when I was there, the Native faculty were very supportive and they, really wanted to reach out and support Native students and be a voice for Native issues across campus. And we just had some of the most amazing and fantastic faculty members. I mean, I can tell people, we had in Scott Mama Day and, he would have this really popular class. And we had, Mary Jo Fox, who I worked with, Jay Stouse. I mean, there were just people kind of all over campus. Ophelia Zapata, also still one of my favorite faculty members. We had somebody who taught Navajo as a faculty member, and that was just, to me, outstanding and amazing. So those little things on campus were what really helped me succeed, feel like I was a part of a Native presence on campus, and then to feel like, that I wanted to feel like this was mine, right? This was experiences, ownership of the university and taking that as kind of my identity. And I'll be honest, when I left U of A and I went to other institutions, those kind of things didn't exist and don't exist. It's kind of slow to grow in other institutions.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of leads right into my next question, right? You mentioned mentorship and the importance of building those networks. How did you do that? You mentioned the programs that you were a part of, but was there anything specific that you did to find those mentorships and to reach out for the help that you needed?
So as an undergrad, I was introduced to the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators, NASPA. There was a undergraduate fellows program that it was suggested that I apply for, and I applied and I got in, and I was provided a mentor in that program, and it was somebody out of the financial aid office. And she was not Native, but we were kind of looking at Native American students in financial aid. And she happened to mention one day, oh, we have a Native American faculty member who's on the advisory group for NASPA. And I was like, what? We have somebody, here who's Native and is interested in student affairs? I have to meet this person. So I emailed and got a meeting set up with Mary Jo Tippecanoe Fox, Dr. Fox in American Indian Studies. And I went over and sat in her office and basically realized that she's been doing everything that I ever wanted to do. And, she was kind of this expert, and she was completely understanding of where I was coming from and what I wanted to do. And we just clicked. And from then on out, she, really became my mentor. And I learned kind of side by side with her. She would take me to meetings and I would listen, and I would just kind of pay attention to what was going on. And then eventually I'd be asked to fill some roles after being around for a while, right? Oh, she's there again with Mary Jo. Well, let's just ask her to do this. And then, I got connected with other faculty in American Indian Studies, and they were all great mentors in certain ways. They were all very caring and really wanted you to succeed, wanted our Native students to succeed. So then I would run into other individuals across campus that were just really helpful for me and kind of thinking about what I wanted to do in my career and where I wanted to go. But yeah, it was, thank goodness Mary Jo was there doing NASPA.
Yes. Well, it's those people in our paths, right? And taking advantage of those opportunities to learn from those who are really paving the way. And you're now one of those, those pavers, right? And leaders in your industry. So let's pivot and talk a little bit more about your career. How do you describe your work? I mean, it's so broad. How do you describe your work kind of in general to people?
Most of the time people say, what do you do? I work on Native American issues in higher education. So, it's the success of Native Americans in higher education, and success may be a different definition for different individuals, depending, on what they want to get out of higher education. But I work not just for student success, but faculty and staff, having a sense of belonging in place within higher education institutions, particularly those that are non-native serving, or non-native colleges and universities, predominantly non-native colleges and universities, to try to make sure that Native students, Native voices, Native experiences are included and are part of the everyday operation in institutions. I think we've learned a lot over the past couple of years about institutional history, where institutions kind of are sitting, right, land acknowledgements, the relationship that institutions have had with tribal communities, whether good or bad, and this one thing that I think people often forget is that Native people are a part of everything that's, happened in this country, particularly with educational institutions. And sometimes we see the negative aspects of that. And, what we really want to do is make everything positive, and we want to make the story positive, and we want to show that these things, students are succeeding, faculty and staff are succeeding, and that we are a part of this, and we've always been a part of it, and we're going to continue to be a part of these institutions.
Yeah. And so, in our previous conversations and in some of the articles that you've written, you've mentioned about answering the call. When did you know that this was the work that you wanted to dedicate your career to, and how did you answer that?
So I can't remember whether I was an undergrad or whether I was kind of in between undergrad and the master's program. And I was trying to decide, right, what is it that I want to do for my graduate level work? Because what kind of job do I want to have down the road? And what do I really want my career to be? And this was really early in the email days when we had Pine, and it was such a pain in the butt to try to get onto email. But an email had come through with a job description and a job opening, and I happened to see it, and I happened to kind of read through it and think, that's exactly the job that I want. That's what I want to do. And it turns out it's the job that I have right now. And I had forgotten that for quite a while, that, when it was probably sometime in the late 90s, the job description for the director of the Harvard Native American program had come through my email or one of the offices to forward along. And I just thought, that's what I want to do. That's, where my career needs to go. And that's how I started to focus on kind of the work that I did, besides the fact that, I didn't want any Native students to have kind of the same experience that I had.
Sure. Yeah. And the role of social change, right? It's often very thankless and very complicated. There's a lot of different aspects of your work. What keeps you motivated and moving forward every day?
Every day, there are two things that happen every year that I don't know that I could really work well without. The first one is, the beginning of every academic year, and the students who come in, and the students who come with their parents and their grandparents, and sometimes their nieces and nephews, their aunts and uncles. Some students come with like a whole entourage of family members, especially, in institutions, selective institutions, because it's such an exciting time. And, everybody wants to see it. Like, I want to see Harvard. I want to see Yale. I want to see my student move in. It's so exciting, and the kind of desire and the hopes and just the positive energy that comes with every student and their family members who come to campus. And then commencement, right? And this is the time when this is why what I do matters. When you see students graduate and you see, again, their grandparents, their younger brothers and sisters, or nieces and nephews, their aunts and uncles. We have some students who come with 30 people to, commencement activities, and they cry and they talk about how hard it was being away from home. But then, their family members are so proud of them. And, we have some really momentous graduates sometimes. The first ever person, a member of a tribe who has graduated, right, with a PhD. It's really amazing and powerful to see that happening, and to see it kind of happening in growing numbers, and more students coming in, and being able now with social media and everything that we can put out online to really highlight that success and kind of the power of our graduates and those students who are being successful. And then I think the Native voices, especially the younger Native voices that are really taking the stage right now and are really speaking for communities and speaking for Native issues at the national level, is so empowering to me. I love seeing them. I love meeting them. I love having had, served with some of them and had them in our institutions, and just seeing that dedication that they're bringing, and really, moving forward for some social change, right? Making people think about Native issues in ways that they hadn't before. And they're just so eloquent sometimes and cool, right?
Yes, the younger generations, right? I mean, sometimes they're just so amazing about what they pick up on, and the vision that they have for the future. I think it's very inspiring, and that's why we work on college campuses. We love being a part of that. Yeah, absolutely. So, you've talked about a lot of successes. What does success look like in your personal career, right? And maybe what are some of the goals that you have, short-term, long-term, in what you want to do in your role?
So I think success is, Native students who graduate, right? That, and seeing that, that's number one success, right? And, we have students who come into higher ed and they decide this is not for them. And I don't want to say that they're not successful. That's success too. They pivot and they go into something else, and they know that this is not right for them and it's something else they want to do. But that's the number one success in my career, seeing Native students graduate, and then seeing how much their work then after graduating impacts tribal nations nationally, or Indigenous people globally. That's really something that I think you can see a lot more now, right? Because of the social media aspect, but because we have so many more Native and Indigenous successful individuals in leadership positions. And then I think, really getting institutions to think about their history, about their relationship with tribal nations. And some institutions have really difficult histories when it comes to tribal nations. Having them really think thoughtfully about what that means, and what does it mean to have good relationships now, right? What does it mean to build a positive, impactful relationship with tribal nations and tribal communities? And then seeing policies change within institutions, or seeing national policies change to kind of further that along and really help that grow and move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you've talked about this and previously, but one of your, I think, was so inspiring about you and your career is you've really kind of had to look at your experience and really pave the way for someone else. And you mentioned earlier that you don't want other people to have the experience that you had, and to have a better future, and giving a platform to those younger generations and creating that social change. So how do you think your unique journey really shaped the perspective that you bring to the table, and how you specifically lead in your role for social change?
Well, I think one of the really unique things, and I've looked back and said, That was really important to my journey and where I've gotten to. As an undergrad, I had one of those grunt student worker jobs. I think I got paid $4.25 an hour. That was the minimum wage at that time. Was not a lot of money. And I literally would kind of run around from campus building to campus building, pick something up, drop something off, make copies, right? I mean, it was not exciting. And there wasn't a lot that, you kind of get out of a job like that, except that later I realized that for a while, I knew every building on campus. I knew every kind of back door that led into these weird places that nobody ever went. I knew kind of I started to understand how the processes work on campus, right? Forms that had to be filled out, where they had to go, who had to approve what, because I would have to run around. Sometimes I'd have to run around and get somebody to sign something, and I'd have to stand there and wait and kind of be like, okay, please just sign this so I can take it back. And it was always kind of like, who are you? What are you doing? And that was step one, really. Sometimes you have to do the grunt job, but every position or every experience that you have, teaches you something. You learn from that, and you take the really positive things from it, and negative things, right? And you figure out, how to move that into the next position that you go into. So starting, at the very bottom level, sometimes is what you have to do to get to that. I still had this desire for this great job, right? But it takes a while, and I think that's okay. And there are steps that you have to go through to get to where you want to be. So just keep going, keep at it, and keep moving, keep moving forward.
Yeah. And I mean, your persistence, we talked about grit, right? Doing that grunt work, it is one day at a time, and persisting even through, those tough times, or, those calculus classes that really challenge us. And I'm sure there's other challenges that you face. And, when I read your work and you talk about some of the barriers that Native students are facing today in higher education, right? The cultural adjustments, the lack of empowerment, right? The low sense of belonging, just to kind of name a few. You overcame those things. And how do you talk to, whether it's, Native students that you're mentoring, or even just in your work, how are you helping others persist and break down those barriers?
I think, the first thing is to kind of zone out all the negative aspects, right? There's always somebody out there who says you can't do it for whatever reason, right? You're a Native American, it's just Native Americans don't graduate, whatever it is. I was told also multiple times, you'll never be able to do this. I was a mother, I have lots of children. I was trying to work full time, go to school full time. There's always somebody who's going to tell you can't do it. And I had to zone it out, and I had to say, I just can't listen to you. I have too much stuff to do. I have this responsibility. I have it laid out. I'm going from here to here to here, and that's all I can, think about right now. So, don't listen to the negative part, but then at the same time, find those individuals who are really going to tell you, you can do this, and give you opportunities and ask you to join along and come along with them. So, the mentors that I talked about, in a lot of ways, the nice thing about the Native faculty at U of A when I was a student is, they were kind of my elders and the people that I looked up to, because I didn't have family in Tucson, right? All of my family was hours away. And I needed that kind of encouragement, and I needed people to tell me that, oh, of course you can do this, right? And they didn't never think twice, I think, most of the time. And I would think all the time, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. But they were always like, oh, you can do this. And it was like that simple. You can do this. And, let's figure out and make a plan for how you can get it done. And then, sometimes being sure to, I think there are certain policies on university campuses that are just not helpful for students, and not just Native students, but for students in general. And how do we really think about being a little bit, maybe not flexible, but we're really helping students to navigate that, and being proactive in how we support students and get them through some of the difficult times. That for me, I think, is what really helped, right? I had individuals who knew where I wanted to go, knew where I wanted to be, and said, here are things that you can do. Come with me to this, you can do this. And, they just really lifted me up, and that's what made the difference.
Yeah, we all need those people that can help us when we can't quite see clearly ourselves, the next step in our journey, right? And those who can encourage us, even though we might not know exactly where that foot needs to be placed, right? And those
Yep.
people that can support us and encourage us. Absolutely. So, really what you're doing, you're changing people's perspective, you're changing culture. How does that work in social change compared to some of the traditional definitions of leadership or models of leadership that we see, right? Where people are leading a specific team, or they're leading an organization, where you're really leading, this change, this culture shift. How does that compare and contrast in your definition of leadership?
I think for me, the important part about leadership is providing opportunities for others to have the voice and to pick up their voice and to get it out there. So I talked about these young Native, just amazing leaders that are coming out, and somebody has to give them the opportunity to be in these positions and to have this platform to speak in the way that they are going to speak, in the way that we need them to speak. Right, always providing opportunities for others, because it can't, it's not just my voice. I can't be the one voice for all Native people. We have to provide opportunities for different tribal perspectives to be taken into consideration and to be put out there. But also, really encouraging, especially these young Native scholars, to take on these roles in situations where they're the only Native voice, right? Lots of us run into that. You're the only Native person who's on this committee or on this board. And then you feel so much kind of pressure to be that expert spokesperson. But the reality is you don't have to. You take those positions, right? You answer the call when you have the ability. You do the best that you can, and then you find opportunities and ways to open that door for others to come in and have that voice, and either to take over so you don't have to do it anymore, or to join you, right? And then that's not just me by myself anymore. Opening up doors, giving opportunities, and really letting students, younger folks, even your colleagues know that this opportunity is available, and encouraging them to take advantage of it, or try to their best to take advantage of it. So not just being the person that says you have to follow me. No, it's like, let's open up all these doors. You follow which way works best for you, but let's just make sure there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I love that. And, I think that transcends not just, our work in higher education, but I think that, can be great advice for even other careers and industries, right? And allowing more voices to be heard and to seeing things from different perspectives, because sometimes we get caught in tradition, and we get caught in how things always have been. And how we innovate and how we grow is by including different perspectives. So absolutely. So one of my background is in athletics, and I always admire great athletes because there's just something different about them that, my background was in swimming, and everyone would go back and forth, across the pool every day. But some people would end up going faster than others. And it was the little things that they did, or the little tweaks that they made to their stroke or to their preparation, that allowed them to get ahead. So, I wanted to ask you, what are your, what's your X factor? What has made you that, go from a good career and a strong voice to a great career and an inspirational voice in what you do?
For me, it's always been my community where I grew up. It was such an encouraging community in terms of seeking education. I grew up, and people always said, "Oh yeah, go do that. You can do it." And they were supportive when I came home. "How are you doing? We're so proud of you." People would always say, "We're so proud of you." And then, I think it became, I would travel nationally to conferences and events and have to speak based on, the various positions that I've held. And I would have some, sometimes older tribal members, grandparents, or I'd have school teachers and counselors come up and say, I just want to thank you for the work that you do. And it was just so empowering to me to think, I don't know, what I'm doing that makes you so excited, but they said, we're just so happy you're there and that you're out here and you're recruiting students and you're helping them when they're there, because they want people to help their tribal members when they go to college, right? They know some of the issues and they don't want that to happen. So just having random people come up to me and say, I just want to thank you. And it's not so much, I always think it's not me so much that they're thinking, it's the fact that this position is there, right? And that there's a Native person in that position and somebody who is there to really help look out for students and their success and their experiences in higher education. I think that for me is the X factor, those community members who just say, you're there. I want to thank you for being there. And this is what I need. And this is what I want from my students. And please do that. I get people telling me what to do a lot.
Well, and not only are you there, but you truly care, right? And you have that passion. And, I love how you talk about the future and, the opportunities that are available and that we can accomplish together and the lives that we can change. I think that's really inspiring. So, as we kind of wrap up the questions that I have, I encourage, other members of the audience to submit questions. But what are some final thoughts or pieces of advice that you would give Wildcats, alumni as well as current students, to apply what we've talked about today to their careers and that they can improve their leadership strategies and skill sets?
Right. So we talked a little bit, Lacey, about answering the call, and I had a very funny or interesting story about what does that mean. And so a few years ago, I was sitting in my office, and I think it was, the late fall, and it wasn't time to go home yet, but it's like 4:30 and the sun has already set. So it's like the end of the day, and my phone rings, and I pick it up, and this very young woman says to me, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm calling from the White House, and President Obama has looked at your work and your resume, and he's really interested in appointing you to this position. Can I verify your identity? Can you give me your name and your social security number? And I was like, what? No, I am not doing that. And I thought, what an interesting scam. I've never heard of this before. And she says, no, I'm really calling from the White House. And I was like, I don't know about that. And she said, well, I need to verify, you are who you are. And I'm speaking to Shelly Lowe. And I said, you know what? Why don't you give me your name, give me your phone number, and I'll call you back. So she gave me her name, her phone number, and I got off the phone and I said, okay, well, let me see if I can Google this girl or this woman and see, who she is. And her name popped up, not her position, but, as being in Washington, D.C. and, with the phone number. And I was like, okay, well, let me think about this. And it still took me a few minutes to be like, I don't know if I'm going to call you right back. I called her back, and well, then, eventually it turned out that, yes, they actually did want me to do something. And a long process ensued from there. But it was kind of like, when I say answer the call to the best of your abilities, that came out of the blue. And I didn't know whether this was something that I was fit for, what goes into all of this. And, it was a slow process, but, you take those opportunities when you can, even when it's, you're intimidated and you feel like you might be a little bit uncomfortable. And am I the right person for this? But you go into those positions, do the best that you can, learn what you can, and then kind of keep going from there. That's, that if we don't do things that we think we can't do, then we won't know whether we can do it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think another point that you make was, we all play a role, right? And whatever, arena that we find ourselves, we play a role, and, you've found your role. Or maybe people told you what your role was.
Yeah.
But do you have any comments on that and how we find our place within our organization that we're in right now?
Well, I always feel like, we all have our role in the creation story of whatever positions we're in, whatever organization. And I've seen individuals come into organizations and forget that there's a creation story for that organization, right? Forget that there was work done beforehand, and not kind of acknowledge the individuals and the people who have really built the program to be what it is. And then when they do that, you lose the individuals who were fighting so hard for whatever organization getting it created. And it's just, that's difficult. It's hard. You sometimes we do have to come in and, change the story and make things different. But we need to do the best that we can. We need to understand, right, what it has been the story, who has been involved, what has been their role, right? And then if you can't do that, I don't know that you can understand your role very well in what you're doing and where it's supposed to go. So having a good sense of, there are different parts to everything, what has come before, what has been really positive and helpful, what needs to be adjusted, but keeping that in mind and not just coming in and saying, oh, this is my vision, this is what I want it to be, and completely changing it all of a sudden. It's just not, I don't think it's helpful to come in and kind of make changes that way.
Yeah. And just as I hear you speak, I mean, you're so accomplished. You are truly an inspiration in your field and in our Wildcat community, but you're so humble and you're so willing to empower others. I think that speaks to your leadership, and I think that is just really inspiring. And I appreciate what you've said today and the empowerment that you've kind of left us with. I appreciate that. So we do have some questions from the audience. So I'll pull that up and there. Hi, Habib. You're here. And Habib talks about he works in the Gila River Indian Reservation. He wants to know if you've ever been there.
I have. I have actually been there a number of times. A few years ago, I was on an Honoring Nations team that came out, and we visited one of the projects there that was nominated for Honoring Nations Award. So I was able to visit, meet with some of the youth council, the elders council. And when I did some of the work with American Indian Studies, we had gone out and we had met with the leaders out there in the community. So yes, I have been out there.
Yay, good. Another question is, as a successful leader, you're involved with so many things, teaching, research, presenting, also your PhD work. What advice do you have for young professionals who are also very busy, but to stay organized or maybe even to delegate, right?
Yeah, delegating's hard. I'm really bad at that. I think part of the delegating is, having people in your team who you trust, right? And that can do the work that you need to delegate to them. Because if you're delegating and that person really is not the best person to do that work, it's going to make things even more difficult for you. So having a good sense of who you're delegating to and knowing their abilities and their expertise level in that situation. But I think for me, I'm very most of the time organized. I mean, I have to kind of compartmentalize, right? So this amount of time getting ready and children and doing things, this amount of time, right, for work, and making sure that I have a regular schedule and I kind of stick to that regular schedule really makes a difference. And it can get difficult sometimes. There are long hours when you work in higher education, some days, really long hours. But at the end of the day, you kind of assess and say, what did I not get done yet? And what do I need to add to my plate tomorrow? Or, yay, I got it all done. I don't have to worry about it tomorrow. Yeah.
Yep. Building that trust, right? And helping those. So another question is from Candace, and Candace works with our Honors College here on campus. And she said, I'd love to hear how the Honors College specifically made a difference in Shelly's career. And also talk about being a Flint Scholar, which you were the first Native American woman Flint Scholar, right?
I was the first Native American Flint Scholar. And I have to say, Dr. Kissling was a lifesaver for me my freshman year. He was one of the staff at the Honors College. And he had kind of an open door policy. If you needed to come in and talk to him, you could come in and talk to him. And he listened, and he was so great, so welcoming. But the entire staff, at that time, it was the Sloniker House. And, you walked in and you just felt comfortable. Things were kind of really set up to welcome students and to give them spaces to kind of be in the space. And then being a Flynn Scholar, I'm the odd one. I was the Flynn Scholar then who had children while I was in undergrad. So I was the Flynn Scholar with the baby. So I didn't do kind of all of the activities that were kind of built into being a Flynn Scholar. It didn't mean that I wasn't part of the community. I was. I developed really great relationships with the other Flynn Scholars, and kind of the support that community provided was amazing and awesome. And the opportunities that came with being a Flynn Scholar were really great. There were connections that I was able to make early on campus that I think, being a Flynn Scholar just allows you access to certain experts on campus, or certain faculty on campus that other students, kind of think about and hear about, but we got introduced to a lot of things. And that was really great. And also then, just some of the staff, I used to just go to the Honors College to Slonaker House and hang out and talk to some of the staff. And actually one of the women who used to work there, she now works here at Harvard. So it's been really nice to be like, oh, and you're here. And, have that really fond memory of, the Honors College and all the great things that were going on.
Oh, what great connections. And the world is small, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
In some ways. And kind of the last question here is, what advice would you give to Native American graduates or alumni that are just starting out in their careers?
I think find your network, right? Know your support network. Who's your support network? Who are the people that you can kind of call on? I have really great colleagues across the country, and sometimes randomly I will have to call them because I don't have anybody here to kind of help me and answer questions that are specific to some of the things that I work with. And I will call up and be like, what's going on? This is what's happening here. What do you think? Totally different parts of the country, totally different kind of institutions, but having that network that I can reach out to when I need to get some feedback, or when I just need to kind of run things by individuals, is really important. Because you will often find, especially as you start into a career, that you don't have a network built in automatically in the institution or whatever job you're going into. You have to build that along the way, but having a network that can be there, not to follow you, but who you can reach out to, is really important. And, making sure that you can be the same for other individuals, but without overwhelming yourself. I think it's really hard. And I also tell people, maybe don't do it the way I did. A lot of my career trajectory was somebody saying, you should do this, and me saying, okay, and then doing it. And that's worked out and it's been okay. And for some people, that's probably all right. But, can you really be thoughtful, do your homework, and make sure that the opportunities that you're going into are the right opportunities, and they're going to do something for you, as opposed to just taking, your energy, your expertise, and not helping you out. Right? You gotta make sure something's coming to you as well.
Yes, absolutely. And, having the courage to reach out, right, and to find that network is sometimes scary, but, just like you said, it's so necessary to get our footing and to build upon that for career success and life success.
Yep.
So, Shelly, thank you so much again for being with us today, for the work that you're doing. It's so important, and not just leading people, but leading social change, and building those roads to inclusivity. We just appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you, Lacey. And I just want to say thanks to all the people who have helped me get here, because I definitely did not do this by myself.
I'm sure we can all say that and contribute, the success that we find to our communities and the people that support us along the way. So thank you. And even from the chat here, it sounds, there's, former students at Harvard who have benefited from your program. So, it's your work is far reaching, and, we see this type of work even on our own campus, right? And I just have to show our recent land acknowledgement that the University of Arizona has came out with this summer. And as it says, we respectfully acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of Indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and Indigenous communities through education offerings, partnerships, and community service. And I'll just add, we have amazing rock star alumni like you, Shelly, within our community. So thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you, Lacey.
And for everyone listening, please don't forget to sign up for future events for the alumni from the Alumni Career Lab on the Bear Down Network, or you can check out our website, arizonaalumni.com. Thank you everyone for joining. Bear down and go Cats.